Welcome back to Classic Korea channel where we break down the most talked about topics in Korea right now. Today's story is one that began in Utah, the US, but has reached all the way here in Korea. The assassination of American conservative activist Charlie Kirk. And his death has sparked tributes from Korean celebrities like Siwon and Sunye, as well as foreign athletes in the KBO, Korean Baseball League. And those tributes have ignited intense online debate. Now, before we get into it, I want to say this clearly. I know this is a very sensitive and polarizing topic, and some of you watching may feel strongly one way and others may feel the opposite. My hope is that here on this channel, we can take an extra step to stay thoughtful and respectful, and yes, to stay classy as we unpack what this means for Korea and how it connects to global politics. Okay? So, when Super Junior's Choi Siwon posted "Rest in Peace, Charlie Kirk" on his Instagram story, it looked at first like a simple message of condolences, but what followed showed just how sensitive this issue could become, because within hours, fans or just general public accused him of supporting far-right politics, and then the post was deleted, and Choi Siwon had to clarify that his intention was to mourn the tragedy, not to endorse Kirk's ideology. And he wasn't the only one. Former wondergirls member Sunye uploaded a tribute with Bible verses, but later deleted it after critical comments flooded in. And actress Jin Seo-yeon briefly shared a photo, while actor Choi Jun-young, who's known for his conservative leanings, openly praised Kirk for his work for freedom and peace. And even foreign players in Korea's baseball league, the KBO, shared tributes, while memorial spaces appeared at Seoul and Incheon's Liberty Park, and Seoul's Namdaemun. Okay, now here's where it gets complicated. Some people saw these tributes as nothing more than expressions of sympathy for a human tragedy, but others saw them as dangerous endorsements of an activist whose politics were deeply divisive. And chances are, even among you watching this video, like I said, there may be disagreements about how to view these actions. That's why it's important to first understand who exactly was Charlie Kirk, and why did his assassination spark reactions not just in the US, but here in Korea too. So for those of you who don't know, although I'm sure you all know, but maybe not, Kirk was not a household name everywhere. But in the United States, he was one of the most prominent faces of the modern conservative movement. Although, let me stop and say that even some of these phrases that I used to introduce him could be debatable. Okay, and I know you could disagree with whatever I said. So leave them in the comments. So in 2012, at just 18 years old, he co-founded Turning Point USA, which is a group that sought to organize conservative students on high school and college campuses. And the group quickly became a very powerful grassroots network, heavily aligned with Donald Trump and the Republican Party's right wing. And over the years, Kirk built a personal brand as an outspoken defender of Christian values, limited government, and what he called American exceptionalism. Okay? Again, these things could be debatable. And his influence went beyond student politics. So he had a YouTube channel boasting more than 3.7 million subscribers, and now, after the assassination, it exceeded 4 million subscribers, which is quite huge. And he had frequent appearances on cable news and a close relationship with Trump's family. He once worked as an aide to Donald Trump Jr., and he became a leading voice for the MAGA movement. And to supporters, he was a fearless truth teller who dared to confront what they saw as liberal dominance in schools, media, and culture. But to critics, he was a dangerous demagogue, spreading conspiracy theories and fueling division in an already polarized country. And this dual image helps explain, I think, why his sudden death has sparked such mixed reactions. So on one hand, leaders across the political spectrum in the states, from Donald Trump to Barack Obama, from Kamala Harris to Bernie Sanders, they condemned the violence and offered condolences. Framing his killing as another dark reminder of America's worsening political climate. But on the other hand, some commentators and activists who clash with Kirk's rhetoric in life have struggled with how or whether to publicly mourn him. And even within hours of shooting, debates raged online and offline. I'm pretty sure you guys know and feel it, better. Was this the silencing of a patriot or the inevitable consequence of radical rhetoric? And the assassination has also drawn attention abroad. So in countries like South Korea, which we will talk about, and even the UK and Canada, Charlie Kirk's name may have not been widely recognized before, but his death has become a symbol, like either of free speech under attack or of the volatility of American politics spilling onto the global stage. So like I said, in Seoul and Incheon, South Korea, makeshift memorials appeared in public spaces. And according to my research, in London, his death was invoked during anti-immigration protests that drew more than 150,000 people. And leaders from Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu to Italy's Giorgia Meloni issued statements of condolence, highlighting just how far Kirk's story had traveled globally. Now, it is worth noting that Kirk's final days were spent not in America, but in Asia. So just 5 days before the assassination, he was actually in South Korea speaking at the event called Build Up Korea 2025, which was a Christian conservative event that attracted international attention. And from there, he traveled to Japan, where he gave what turned out to be his last overseas speech. And by the time he returned to the US, his fate was sealed. And for some supporters in Korea and Japan, this made the loss feel strangely personal, I guess, as if they had shared in his final chapter. And again, the global response has been super complex and at times contradictory. There has been genuine grief from political allies and even from opponents who insist that no human life should end in such a way. But there has also been criticism and even satire and even celebration from those who saw Kirk as a symbol of extremism rather than democracy. And this mixture of mourning and controversy has made his death not just a strategy, but a mirror, reflecting the fractured state of political discourse today. So now let's talk about South Korea. So in Korea, the fallout from Charlie Kirk's death took on a surprising and highly visible form. And what began as tributes quickly turned into heated controversies, drawing K-pop stars, artists, actors, and even athletes into an unfamiliar political storm. So the most prominent case, I guess, was that of Choi, a member of the globally famous group superjunior. So just a day after the assassination, Choi posted a message on social media sharing a Christian tribute from Pastor John Bevere and the group Bible Alive. And the post also included the words, "Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Well done, good and faithful servant." So that's from Matthew 25:23, right? Chapter 25, verse 23. But almost immediately, the reaction was fierce. So some fans and some people interpreted the post as tacit support for Kirk's far-right politics, which triggered calls for Choi to leave the group altogether. Although, I don't know how many fans, like true fans of Super Junior, really made that call. We'll have to see, and I'm pretty sure some Korean media exaggerated the sentiment. But yeah, the sentiment itself was very divided, and there were fierce reactions to it. And the backlash was so intense that Choi deleted the post, later explaining on the fan platform Bubble that his intention was not political endorsement, but a simple recognition of tragedy. He wrote, Charlie Kirk was a Christian, a father, and a husband. Regardless of politics, the fact that he lost his life in front of so many students is a heartbreaking tragedy. That is why I paid my respects. And he wrote, after posting the tribute, I was grateful for the attention it received from the media. Oh, really? Okay. But since it seemed to be interpreted differently from my intention, I felt that my inadequate feelings had already been conveyed enough, so I decided to take it down. Even now, since there's so much attention, I wanted to explain it like this. And yeah, so that was his response and his quote-unquote statement. Now, Sunye, a former member of wondergirls of JYP, and she's now a mother of 3 children. She also posted a tribute. So on September 16th, Sunye uploaded this photo on the right on her Instagram story, along with verses from the first epistle of John. God sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. He loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. But as with Choi, the criticism came super quickly. Many followers left harsh comments, accusing her of aligning herself with extremism. And she deleted the post and later responded in frustration. A person has died, and I felt the need to mourn. Do you laugh and say good riddance at the death of a human being? So let me read you the full statement in English. After watching the video of a grieving wife pleading over the tragic shooting death of her husband, I shared a tribute on my story with a heavy heart, simply as a fellow human being and as a mother. These then strangers, whom I have never met, began coming into my space to hurl insults at me, to vent their anger over Charlie Kirk's political positions, far right or far conservative issues, even dragging wondergirls into it. Why go that far? 왜 그렇게까지 하시나요? She asked. A person has died, and there's a heart that mourns. So I ask you, when a life is lost, do you really feel joy? Do you laugh and say he deserved it? Are you angry at me just because I did not stay silent? For those who come into my space and fill it with demeaning words, unnecessary fights, and language that taints this place, please understand that I respond with delete and block. I hope you won't resent me for that. Setting aside my job, my role as a mother or as a woman, I mourned the tragic death of another human being, simply as a person. And as a person, I am living with the hope that the world I leave behind for the next generation will be at least a little better than the one we live in now. Yes, we all have different perspectives and thoughts, but I believe it's because of those differences that we can adjust to find better ways forward. Okay? Through those difficult but meaningful clashes, we can move toward a better world. So I ask once more, please stop turning my tribute into a political or religious issue and refrain from coming into my space with rude and dehumanizing behavior. In other words, Sunye basically made clear she was not taking a political stance, but expressing empathy as a fellow parent. Now we're gonna talk about we're gonna discuss this more in depth at the end of this video, okay? But still, the episode revealed how even a gesture of mourning could be swept into political debate, okay? And other Korean celebrities also found themselves entangled in the controversy. Actress Jin Seo-yeon briefly shared Kirk's photo with the caption, rest in peace. 삼가 고인의 명복을 빕니다. Only for the story to vanish 24 hours later. And actor Choi who had previously shown open support for former Korean President Jin Seo-yeon during his impeachment crisis, wrote on Instagram, "We will not forget your efforts for freedom and peace. Thank you for being with us. Rest in peace." Unlike the idols, he did not delete his message, unlike Siwon or Sunye, which is unsurprising given his consistent conservative leanings. And the ripples even extended into sports. So, foreign baseball players active in Korea's professional league, the KBO, including Jake Cave of Tucson Bears and Austin Dean of the LG Twins, also paid their respects. And let me read you a specific article talking about this case. Okay, amid news of American far-right activist Charlie Kirk's assassination, several foreign players in Korea's KBO Baseball League have posted tributes on their personal social media accounts, sparking controversy among Korean fans. Given Kirk's record of racist remarks and extreme conservative views, many see these tributes as troubling. On September 12th, Tucson Bears outfielder Jake Cave shared a memorial post for Kirk on his Instagram story. Soon after, other foreign players followed suit, including Austin Dean of the LG Twins, Logan Allen of the NC Dinos, and Adam Oler of Kia Tigers. The article says, Kirk was known as the founder of the right-wing youth organization Turning Point USA and one of Donald Trump's closest conservative allies, but he also drew fierce criticism during his lifetime for extreme rhetoric. He once quoted a Bible verse to suggest that homosexuals should be stoned to death, referred to Martin Luther King Jr. as a bad man, and openly mocked minorities. Some of his remarks became notorious. Kirk said that when he encountered a dumb black woman in customer service, he wondered whether she had earned her position through merit or special hiring policies. He also claimed that when he saw a black airline pilot, he couldn't help but think, wow, I hope his license is real. Kirk praised British colonialism as something that brought dignity to the world, and often voiced discriminatory views toward Asians and other minorities. Against this backdrop, Korean fans have reacted with outrage at the baseball players' tributes. One fan wrote on social media, I felt like my team's foreign player died today, a way of expressing how their affection vanished after seeing the post. Another sarcastically commented, hearing that foreign players posted tributes left me speechless. Must be tough for them living in a gun-regulated country like Korea. Interesting. Fans also pointed out the irony that Kirk fiercely opposed gun control, once saying that deaths from firearms are a price worth paying. Some mocked the players, writing, they must be so anxious living in Korea without their guns. Others took it further. He hated Asians, yet these guys came all the way here to make money. And how do you play on a team full of Asians when the man you're mourning despises them? So I saw some comments on YouTube and on articles claiming that Charlie Kirk once referred to Asians as yellow monkeys and say something like along the lines of "Get out, yellow monkeys of America." I tried to verify that, but I couldn't find any evidence. Fact check if you have evidence. Let me know the source, but I couldn't find anything related to that specific comments about comparing Asians to yellow monkeys. But here, according to this article, some people claim that Kirk, how do you play on a team full of Asians when the man you're mourning despises them? Okay, interesting comments. The article continues. Interestingly, many of the players who posted tributes are from the American South, especially Texas, a Republican stronghold. Fans didn't miss that detail. Texas is deep red, of course they would think like this, one wrote. Another put it bluntly, white men default to the far right. Okay. Others added, it's easier just to assume white male athletes are Trump supporters. If they're Southern, religious, and go to church, it's 200% guaranteed. Okay. Not everyone agreed, the article says. Some argued that political views are a personal freedom and that criticizing someone for offering condolences after a death is taking politics too far. They pointed out that even in the US, where Kirk's death has triggered widespread mourning on the right, people have lost their jobs for speaking against him. In that sense, KBO's foreign players are part of the same polarized landscape that defines American politics today. Still, many Korean fans are urging caution. Plenty of baseball players probably share similar views, one wrote, but if that's the case, at least don't flaunt it online. The debate echoes the controversy that followed Super Junior's Siwon, who deleted his own tribute to Kirk after public backlash. For many Koreans, mourning a figure remembered abroad as a conservative hero is not acceptable when that same figure promoted far-right ideology and racist rhetoric. So that was the article. What do you think? I just wanted to introduce an example of the articles posted in Korea. Although I see that even the Korean media is divided in terms of how to talk about this whole case. Okay, and this controversy really highlights how differently Charlie Kirk is viewed depending on the cultural context. According to this article, right? In the United States, he had a strong conservative following, right? Yeah, right here. So yeah, and for many on the right, posting a tribute feels natural, even expected. But in Korea, where his statements on race, sexuality, and colonialism are judged without that same partisan loyalty, at least according to that specific article that I just read you, that reaction is far harsher. So for KBO's foreign players, the tributes reflected the political climate of their home states, I guess, often conservatives and southern, although I don't necessarily agree with that comment saying that if someone's white male and from south is 200% whatever, and because in general, I don't like generalization. But anyways, Korean fans interpreted them through their own values, where racism and far-right extremism are taken very seriously. So, I think this raises a larger question. In an age where athletes and entertainers are global figures, and when the person being mourned is as divisive as Charlie Kirk, is it possible for any tribute to be seen as apolitical? Okay? And this is something that I want to discuss because the debate around Korean celebrities, posting tributes to Charlie Kirk, can be summed up by two clashing instincts and two clashing comments. Okay? So, on one hand, some netizens are outraged that entertainers have to delete posts and issue apologies or statements simply for expressing grief. And this is an example of a comment along that line. And their argument is that mourning is the most basic human act. And if a society starts policing even that, then freedom of conscience is at risk. And the question they raise is, has Korea become a place where even condolences are censored? On the other end, critics argue that not every tribute is equal. And for them, mourning is not automatically innocent. It depends on who is being mourned. So one netizen compared it to the idea of mourning a notorious criminal or honoring Hitler or Japanese war criminals at a shrine. And I guess in that framing, a tribute isn't just a personal expression of sympathy. It's seen as legitimizing or whitewashing the ideology and harm associated with the deceased. I guess, yeah, for some people, Charlie Kirk is as evil as Hitler or Japanese colonialist war criminals. Again, this whole thing, many of these things being discussed could be debatable. And the public seems split almost evenly between these two perspectives, even in Korea. So in one poll online, where 3,551 people participated between September 15th and October 13th, 49% of respondents said paying respects is a personal freedom, while 51% answered celebrities should have been more cautious with their words. So that near 50-50 divide perfectly reflects the underlying tension of freedom of expression versus, I guess, social responsibility. So in an ideal world, Sunye's words that he posted, a long statement that he posted online, would stand on their own, because she mourned, like she says, she mourned as a human being, not as a political figure, and that should have been enough. But what critics fear, I think, what critics fear is not simply her intent, it's how her words could be used by others. Because once a celebrity tribute enters the public sphere, it no longer exists in isolation. Because it can be seized, it can be reframed, and repurposed by groups with very different agendas. And yeah, they're not just reacting to her intent. They're essentially reacting to the reality of how words like hers, these words get picked up and used. And we have seen this even in the K-pop landscape. Once a celebrity, a statement or tribute leaves Instagram, it doesn't belong to them anymore. It can be screenshotted, reposted, and reframed by groups who want to push a completely different narrative. One example I can think of is that the Karina's red jacket with the number 2, the controversy that I also discussed on my channel. That one was also very caused fierce debates, right? And that's exactly what some people are worried about that is happening in Korea. So according to this article, in Korea, organizations like Build Up Korea and Free University immediately transformed Charlie Kirk's death into a symbolic weapon. And their leaders described his blood as a sacrifice that would renew both America and Korea, and videos of his visit to Korea where he denounced China, North Korea, immigration, and transgender rights are being widely shared, framed as the final testimony of a martyr. And those images and narratives are not just staying in Korea. The article says they are circulating among U.S. MAGA networks as proof of a budding global conservative alliance, with Korea held up as a frontline partner. And this is why people don't see tributes as neutral anymore, because they worry that even a simple RIP, rest in peace, from a public figure can be co-opted to legitimize an international far-right movement. And there are also some people claiming that we are Charlie Kirks in the street as a form of street protest, as a rally. And when we go back to Sunye's statement, she is telling the truth about her intent, right? That she mourned as a person. But once her post was out there, it could become part of a much bigger story that she cannot necessarily control. So when Sunye says, I only mourned as a person, yeah, I mean, she's telling the truth about her intent. I believe that she was being honest. But the reason her tribute drew backlash is because people have seen in real time how quickly those same tributes and images can be weaponized. And the issue is less about her sincerity and more about the political afterlife of her words once they leave her personal account. And one story that this reminds me of on an episode is, do you remember last year when Jungkook out of nowhere posted a picture of Bam on Bam's Instagram account? Artists are not guilty, referring to New Jeans members. And then immediately afterwards, he also posted, don't use them, meaning don't use the artist. But then Minijin supporters used that photo and that post as quote-unquote evidence that Jungkook supports Minijin. And when Taehyung posted a photo on his Instagram to celebrate an anniversary of his album where Minijin involved as a producer, again, Minijin supporters framed that as quote-unquote evidence that supports Minijin. And yeah, these posts or photos that celebrities upload, even though their intent might be entirely different, in today's world, in today's polarized world, anything could be reframed and politicized and polarized, I think. So again, the controversy isn't simply about whether Choi Siwon or Sunye felt genuine sympathy, I think. It's about whether public figures should anticipate how their words might be used, especially when the subject is someone whose legacy is inseparable from, as some claim, let me add, from racism extremism, and political division. So ultimately, this raises a question. In today's hyper-connected, politicized world, is it still possible for mourning to be seen as purely personal? Or has every act of condolences become, in effect, a political statement? And to wrap up, I want to bring in the perspective of a YouTube channel called Kim Ji-yoon's Knowledge Play. So it's run by someone named Dr. Kim Ji-yoon, who's a political scientist with a PhD from North America. And it's one of major YouTube channels in Korea when it comes to explaining US politics and international affairs in a scholarly but accessible way. And Dr. Kim recently uploaded a video titled, "Could Charlie Kirk's death bring the end of America's division?" And in that video, she walked viewers through Kirk's background, how he rose to prominence by founding Turning Point USA, how he used debates on college campuses and church networks to build a young conservative base, and how his death shocked the MAGA movement. And she emphasized that while Kirk was a controversial figure, political violence should never be tolerated, and that rejecting violence is essential to democracy. But what stood out to me was the top comment under that video, written by a viewer who claimed they studied political science in Canada. So let me read you this comment. "Hello, Professor. I'm a big fan of your channel. I studied political science in Canada and now work in Korea, and since Canada is so deeply tied to US politics, I followed it closely during my studies. After returning to Korea, I have really appreciated how your channel covers both US politics and international affairs with depth and clarity. That said, I found it difficult not to leave a comment on today's video. I'm not entirely sure what message you wanted to leave with this piece." Maybe some of my subscribers, you guys might say the same thing with this video that you're watching. All right, let me get back to this comment. "Of course, the purpose may have been primarily factual rather than interpretive, but to me, it felt like the video was trying to convey a certain message all the same. It seemed to run along these lines. Charlie Kirk, the prodigy of the MAGA movement, was assassinated. The MAGA camp is in shock and condemning political violence. Violence should be rejected under any circumstances. But because you didn't address the wider context of political violence in the US, or how both parties have reacted, or how Trump himself responded to other violent incidents, the message came across as somewhat one-sided. For instance, including the case of the Minnesota state legislator and his wife who were killed, and contrasting Trump's reaction there with his reaction to Kirk's death would have made the point more balanced. At the very least, noting that Bernie Sanders condemned the assassination and spoke against political violence would have underscored your concluding message that all violence must be rejected. As other commenters also mentioned, the way you described Kirk felt incomplete. By highlighting that he denounced the Capitol riot and labeling him essentially a nonviolent figure, the video glossed over the reality that he was a highly controversial figure whose rhetoric was often inflammatory. Isn't it precisely because of his extreme positions that he became a rising star within the MAGA movement? Compared to other conservative commentators like Ben Shapiro, Kirk arguably leaned even further right, and his speeches, though framed as debates or delivered through church networks, were deeply polarizing. Can that really be described as nonviolent? I share this respectfully, as someone who values your work and always cheers you on. I sincerely hope you will continue producing thoughtful videos, as your channel is a rare and important resource. So this viewer essentially points out that while the video conveyed the message, violence must be rejected, it felt incomplete. And they argue that the video didn't situate Kirk's death in the broader context of political violence in the US, such as Trump's uneven reactions to different incidents, or the bipartisan responses from figures like Bernie Sanders and Obama too, and others. And the commenter also pushed back on how Kirk was portrayed, noting that describing him as essentially nonviolent glosses over the fact that his rhetoric was often inflammatory and that it was precisely his extreme positions that made him a MAGA rising star. And I think this exchange really captures the tension we have been circling throughout today's discussion. Even when the goal is to present factual information, as Dr. Kim tried to do or tends to do, framing becomes unavoidable, right? Do you emphasize that Kirk rejected the Capitol riot, or do you foreground his history of incendiary remarks and polarizing and controversial remarks? And do you place his death within the wider landscape of American political violence, or do you treat it as an isolated moment? And these choices could shape how viewers interpret the message, which is exactly why I think very hard about how to make contents on my channel. And I'm not a perfect person either. So you guys are free to discuss about, how this video you're watching comes across. And this brings, again, back to the core question. In our interconnected world, can any tribute, any commentary, even one delivered in the name of rejecting violence, truly remain apolitical? And to really wrap things up, I want to step outside the headlines and bring a perspective from before all of this happened. So about 7 months ago, someone on Ask Conservatives Reddit subreddit channel asked, what are y'all's criticisms or thoughts around Charlie Kirk? And yeah, he said, I used to listen to Charlie Kirk when I was younger, but now I'm not as much of a fan. He has select good ideas, but a lot of things I don't support. I don't think it's constructive how he bashes the education system and has bad faith debating tactics. Plus, I don't agree with his religious conservatism and his excessive pandering to Trump. He does sound like a bit of a grifter also. I feel like Kirk leans more into culture war stuff than more substantive policy discussions. And yeah, the replies weren't that positive or uniformly positive. And this person wrote that while Kirk had some good ideas, they felt he leaned too heavily into bashing the education system, relied on bad faith debating tactics, and pandered excessively to Trump and came across as more of a culture warrior, even a grifter, than a serious policy thinker. And why do I mention this now? Because it shows that skepticism about Kirk wasn't limited to his political opponents. Even within conservative spaces, there were doubts about his style, his motives, and whether he was really advancing substantive policy or just inflaming culture wars. And contrast that with the almost sanctified way he's being remembered after his death. Like as a martyr, a hero, even a symbol of the MAGA movement's global ambitions. And death has a way of changing the narrative, but it doesn't erase the record of what came before. And then again, there's Korea. In Korea's online spaces, where fans and netizens dissect every word, people still question whether Mourning Kirk could ever be separated from endorsing his politics. And we're talking about a country already so polarized along ideological lines. And this episode really highlighted how a tragedy, thousands of miles away in Utah, could inflame domestic divisions through the lens of celebrity culture. And I'm pretty sure Korea is not alone in this. I'm sure something similar is happening in other countries too. So where does that leave us? Should we see tribute to figures like Kirk as simple human empathy or as implicit endorsements of their ideology? Can Mourning ever truly be apolitical, especially in an age where every statement from whether it's an artist, singer, athlete, or influencer can be politicized? And how should we, as viewers and readers, navigate that line? So leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and Let me say this line from the other channel of mine for this video. Let's stay thoughtful, respectful, and classy. All right, thank you guys. Peace and love.